Hello and welcome to another episode of A Coffee with Chris. As always, brought to you in association with Big C, who help local people affected by cancer, and proudly sponsored by Hill Coaching Company, here to help you become a better version of yourself today. Now, do not forget, people, before we get stuck into this conversation, I've got a cheeky plug in here for a very exciting event coming up in September, based in the fine city of Norwich, called Reputation Matters. I'm so proud to be teaming up with Plain Speaking PR and Naked Marketing on what will be an event all about no-nonsense advice on how to enhance your business brand. If that sounds like a cup of your tea, then let me know on LinkedIn and I will drop you the link to grab your tickets. Do get them before they sell out. Now, I'm so excited to welcome this guest today. Cards on the table. I actually attended a fascinating, insightful talk with him. So I'm really happy to have given him this platform to share that knowledge again with this audience too. So I am speaking today with brand director and marketing consultant at Marketing Labs, Carl West. Now, Marketing Labs are the marketing and brand consultancy that will optimize performance and drive growth by adding science to the process. Carl, welcome to A Coffee with Chris. Let's kick it off with this question. How do businesses navigate what you've coined the brand battlefield?
Well, thanks for having me, Chris. I guess the first thing is, keeping with the sort of the military analogies, it seems sort of very apt that brand diagnosis and navigating that brand battlefield, it's the fundamental first step in a sequential process to get you to strategy. And strategy is a military term that derives from the Greek word strategos, which means commander of the army. So anybody talking about strategy is already talking about a military analogy. So the brand battlefield seems sort of quite apt, to keep that sort of theme going. So what do businesses need to do in terms of navigating the brand battlefield? It starts, the only place it can start is with a proper diagnosis. And I can't make this point clear enough. There can be no strategy if you have not done a diagnosis of the battlefield. It's as simple as that. You have no strategy, because basically you're going to be making your choices on gut feeling, intuition, personal bias, assumptions, which is complete nonsense. You have to do the diagnosis work first. A good strategy choice or good creative is never going to make up for the fact you didn't do a diagnosis. So mapping the battlefield, this brand diagnosis, it's about getting clarity on where and how you can play and win.
I love that.
It's about not breaking rule number one, which is you're not the customer. Your opinion is almost irrelevant. You have to get a perspective from the marketplace. And it's about gathering data and insights that are going to reduce your risk. When you go to spend your hard-earned money on your marketing, let's make sure we can make smarter choices about where you spend it. That in essence is what diagnosis and the battlefield, mapping the battlefield, is all about.
It's such a fantastic analogy, Carl, and you used it at the talk I attended, and it's brilliant. And it surprises me so much, even in our world of organic social media marketing, when we're brought in at a point where they've not done that piece. They've not actually reviewed where their market are, how they need to be talking. They haven't done that, and where's success been before, what's worked, what's not. They haven't done that, and it does fascinate me. What Carl? What are the I don't know whether it's maybe just a bit of an ego thing, but why are business leaders not doing this bit before? Why are they just sort of, blasting on strategy and not actually doing that brand diagnosis piece? Why is that?
There's a range of reasons that I come across, each quarter, if I'm starting new projects, it could be something as simple as, I mean, I literally had it the other day and I didn't win a piece of work because of this, because I was pitching for a piece of work with a training company in Essex, can't obviously mention names, and the MD for the training company said, I'm really in touch, I'm really in tune with what my market needs, I don't need to do any research. And obviously, we had a fundamental difference of opinion on this, that when I tried to point out that the higher up you go in the organization, the less relevant your opinion is. That's the fact, because you're so close to your brand. You look at your brand through rose-tinted glasses, and it's just not reflective of how the market sees you. So I think sometimes it's because the senior decision makers in the company are using personal bias and assumption. Sometimes it's a complete lack of knowledge. They don't actually know the step really. Sometimes they sort of recognize that it should be done, but it's just they're just not sure how are we going to do this. I mean, when you start to talk about doing qualitative and quantitative research, often there's a barrier that comes down and they just say, well, I don't really know how to do it, so we'll skip that bit and we'll move on to making our strategy choices. And I'm doing it right now for an independent brewery. And we had the same conversation. The owner was slightly reluctant to start doing some research. And when I said, look, how big is your newsletter subscription list? And they've got something like 700 plus subscribers. How big is your social media following? 8,000 followers on social. We've got a pot of people that we can start to talk to ask them about their, to figure out, how do they see, and this is really important, we need to figure out, when we do brand diagnosis, we need to figure out how the marketplace sees the category. So craft beer and real ale is the category for this particular project I'm working on at the moment. So we need to understand how they see the category. And if you're really smart with your questions, the questions could be written for any competitor in the category, because they would all want to know the same answers to those questions, not just your brand. So we have to do it for the category. We have to understand the buyer and how they make their decisions and what's important and what isn't important to them. But also it's about the brand and the competitor brands. So the three things we need to think about in what we're trying to find out is about the category, about the buyer, and about the brand. But sometimes it's just, lack of execution. They just don't know how to go about doing it. And they need a little bit of assistance from somebody like you, Chris, or somebody like me to say, look, we have a pot of people, we have some channels, let's use them to gather this information.
Yeah, I think it's such a crying shame, Carl, because I think people are maybe thinking this is a fluffy, non-essential, dare I say, not to wind you up. Whereas actually, how much money, how much profit, how many sales, how many leads are being left on the table through just a lack of research? It's mind-boggling. And I really want to talk about, is this a one and done job, Carl? Is this something that you can do prior to launching a business? Is this something that you do once a quarter? How often should you diagnose your brand, your business?
Okay, so I think a lot of businesses that I work with, the small to medium-sized businesses, they probably haven't done it before. They haven't done it properly before. And the first time that you do it is going to take longer than any subsequent times, just because you're starting from a blank page. But each year that you do it, it gets easier and easier. The key thing is you've got to start ideally ahead of your financial year. So you want to be doing your diagnosis minimum once a year, but you start it 2 to 3 months before your financial year. And if you do that, that means that you can do your diagnosis, you can look at the insights and the data that you've gathered, you can then start to make your strategic choices about what we are or are not going to be doing for the next 12 months. That drives the tactical choices across the 4 Ps on your marketing mix about pricing and distribution and so on. then you've got a full 12 months of trading, having implemented the work that started with the diagnosis. It's almost pointless doing your diagnosis in the middle of your financial year, because you're not going to see the benefits really until the following year.
Really interesting to get that insight on timing, actually. Really interesting. And yeah, that makes so much sense to me, Carl. One of the things I think is worth talking about, and I know that maybe strategy triggers you a little bit, Carl, given your absolute expertise and wisdom in the world of diagnosis. But when it comes to the strategy, I would really like you to provide some sort of statement, explainer, description for both branding strategy and marketing strategy, because I think people are getting this a bit mixed up, aren't they? Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And and it's understandable. And the sorts of deliverables, the level that I work with, they're often interchangeable. So brand and marketing, I call myself a brand consultant, brand management consultant, marketing consultant. I sort of interchange it because sometimes you need to talk the language that the end user understands. So it is understandable why people would get confused about it. But for me, the single biggest difference between the two is marketing typically is short term, and it's about how can I profitably sell a product or a service in a month, a quarter, a half a year, but it's around selling profitably a product or a service. Whereas brand, we're not selling anything. We're talking about associations and image and a feeling that we're trying to give people about why they might want to choose us over a competitor brand. It's much more long term. And that, I think, sometimes is maybe I'll use the analogy of a fruit tree. So if you can imagine the fruit tree is the brand. So you're going to have to fertilize the soil. You're going to have to keep watering the tree. You're going to have to keep pruning it to keep it healthy. That's the brand management side. Marketing's job is to pick the fruit and sell it. It's quite, sometimes it's an easy way of explaining it is what one has to maintain and manage the tree, because if you over harvest that or you don't look after the tree, you could have no product at all to sell.
Such a good analogy. I thought you were taking me back to the battlefield then, Carl, but we went up trees instead. That's brilliant. That makes total sense. I just really did think it was important for you to cover that off, Carl. These conversations, and the whole point in a coffee with Chris is people can have a coffee and they can get as much value as possible and take meaningful action with their marketing, whatever area that is. And so I really want to ask you, perhaps this for the starting steps, and maybe you could run through maybe a couple of recent projects, if you don't mind, to sort of taking us on the story of what are the steps of a brand, going through, maybe just even if they didn't use your business, Carl, what steps would you recommend for them to start their diagnosis, market research journey in order to make more profit and mitigate against risk?
Okay, so I think the first thing to say is, if you start to do a brand diagnosis as on the basis of what we're now talking about, you will probably be in the 10 to 15% of businesses that do it. The vast majority don't do it at all. So even if you do some of what we're now talking about in this conversation, you'll be so far ahead of your competitors. So even if you just pick out 2 or 3 things of what we're now talking about, you'll be miles ahead of where your competitors are. But if you wanted to sort of list out what does a really good diagnosis look like, the things that I would have in there, you would probably start with doing some secondary desk research. And that's both looking at your internal management information, looking at some metrics that you might have from different platforms, but also just good old fashioned, internet search, go out and find out what's out there. Have a look at your competitors. You probably will start to find some white papers where the research piece has already been done on a certain topic, and you can buy these research papers for literally £200, £300, £400. And it already has a lot of the work done for you. So look out for the white papers as part of your secondary research. The next critical thing you need to have in there after secondary research is you need to be doing some qualitative research. And qualitative, it's basically doing a bit like we're doing now. It's talking to people, having a conversation to understand how they see the category, how they see the buying process, how they see your brand and competitor brands. And you'll be amazed how much you can get from qualitative research. And it really is very easy to do, whether you invite people via social, from your email database, whether they're personal contacts. I mean, I'm literally doing this, this morning. I've been working on this brewery, and we are now at the qualitative research stage. We've drafted the questions. We're now starting to draft the list of who do we want to talk to. We want to talk to prospects. We want to talk to customers, but critically, we want to talk to the brand loyalists. Now, the brand loyalists are those that absolutely love this particular brewery, because I need to understand, why do you love them so much? What is it? Because I don't get it. You need to tell me what it is that you think is so fantastic about the product or the packaging or the experience that you have with this particular brand. Now, obviously, by the very nature, qualitative is just a handful of conversations. So you can't base an entire strategy on 10 contacts.
But Carl, just a quick interject there, quick pause. I am blown away by some recent and historical experiences with this. Either my clients or other business owners that I speak to, even when it comes to their social media marketing, I'll say, well, do you know where your customers are hanging out? Do you know how they find out about your latest offers? Do you know where they booked the appointment from? Do you know whether they follow your Instagram account after they've been to your business, etc.? And the answer, I would honestly, hand on heart, say 95% of the time is no, we don't ask them. And I wonder, Carl, if you wouldn't mind just having a quick offshoot of this before we go back onto your point again. Do you think it's because people are afraid of getting negative feedback? Is that why people aren't asking those questions? Because I just think it's so valuable, but I almost feel like people are afraid to ask just in case it's negative, and maybe it's highlighting their company culture. I don't know. What's your take on that? Am I needing another coffee?
Well, I mean, you can never have enough coffee. So I'm about my fifth today. So my own experience is it's not there's not a fear factor with getting negative comments. So I have, you may be correct, but I haven't experienced that as a driver for why they don't ask these questions. It's normally because they're making these assumptions using their own, I've been doing this for 30 years. I don't need somebody to tell me, I know. And the reality is you probably don't know. I mean, I've got numerous examples where the MD has categorically told me, I know what this situation is, but they've gone along with what I've suggested. And hey, presto, they're not right. So, they may be saying, look, speed of turning around a quote is number one to my customers. So we want to be positioning ourselves on, we're faster at, turning our quotes around than anyone else. If you do the research and customers say, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 days, I don't really care. It's fast enough in 3 days. What I do care about is the quality and the precision of what's been delivered to me. Now, and then suddenly that's a whole different positioning basis than what the MD thinks it is. So this happens a lot. So my own experience is it's not about a fear factor. Maybe it's a little bit of, that sort of personal bias and assumption, and maybe a little bit of ignorance around the value in what this can give to them.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't need to, strategy, which will be the next stage in the process. the very nature of strategy is about choosing what you're not going to do. And that sounds a bit odd, but you can't do everything, and nor should you try and do everything. So you need the information to help you shape, well, what are we going to do? Which audiences are we going to focus on? What message do we really want to make sure we consistently deliver to that audience? So probably a little bit of ignorance as well, I would think.
I'm with you, Carl. I did ponder and wonder on that, so it was good to get your wisdom in the area. But forgive me, I interrupted your flow. You were actually covering the starting steps, and you'd just gone into the qualitative.
Yeah. So qualitative, and if you do nothing else as a small business, please do some qualitative research. It's so easy to do. You've got all the channels, you've got the customers.
Yeah.
If you have a retail environment, I would go one step further beyond qualitative, and I would do some ethnography. So ethnography is a really grand term for get out from behind your desk, go into the retail environment, watch, listen, observe, interact with the people that are shopping. You will be amazed by what you will learn if you regularly do this. You know, some of the greatest CEOs of some of the world's biggest brands, at weekends they'll often go into their retail stores and do this. So ethnography, if you've got some sort of retail where you can get out into where does the transaction take place, get out and watch and listen and chat. You'll be amazed. If you then have the time and a little bit of money, you should then look to do some quantitative research. So qualitative is unrepresentative because it's small numbers, and it's about discovering. Quantitative is where you are going to test and confirm the things that you found out in the qualitative and your ethnography. So you can't base a strategy on 10 people told me this, but if suddenly 1,200 people agreed with the 10 people, now you're talking about, we can't ignore this. We've either got to decide to do something about it next year or park it and we'll deal with it in 12 months' time. So quantitative, and it's as simple as an e-survey. It doesn't need to be uber complicated. Do an e-survey to your database. If you have the budget, you can start to do survey panels, using places like YouGov, and you're then talking a few £1,000s, but it's the icing on the cake. And then once you've done your quantitative, I would consider adding another step in, which is going back to qualitative, so we're going back again and talking to people to show and share with them what you've learnt and what you are planning to do for the year ahead. So if it's a new brand campaign or a new concept, or it could even be, I'll give you an example with the brewery company that we're talking to at the moment. We're going to test their current strapline because the suspicions are it's telling people the wrong thing about their product. We're not the customer, so our opinion is worthless. So we are going to find out and test this. Now, if it comes back that we're correct, it's the wrong strapline because it's taking us down this path and they want to be going down that path, then in our second stage qualitative, we're going to share with them what we think it actually should be and what a brand campaign looks like and maybe a new suite of social assets. And we'll share with them and they'll give us some honest feedback. They'll either say, love it, you've absolutely nailed it, or I think you've missed the point. And it gives us a final little sanity check before we go and spend more money on implementation. Companies often ask me, how much should I be spending on diagnosis research? And the simple answer is, if you want a number to justify, it needs to be somewhere between 4 or 5% of your marketing budget should be ring-fenced for research every year. So if you're spending 100 grand a year in your marketing budget, you should be looking at spending 4,000 or 5,000 on research. It's not a huge amount of money, but it's so important.
I'm so happy and grateful that you disclosed that, Carl. I think it's just like everyone talks about the sexy strategy stuff, don't they? Right. And, you know, we're guilty of that to a degree because we're in social media and we're at the top of the funnel and we talk about the social media strategy and stuff like that. And this is exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you. I definitely can see the logic in the ring fencing of the budget, and it's great to get an insight into roughly what that should be as well. Carl, before we spoke, you'd actually dropped a line to me about market orientation and how you were quite passionate about talking around that and in that area, and specifically how social media could be an advantage with regards to market orientation. Please fire away on that. I'm all ears.
Okay, so market orientation is a term that probably a lot of people won't have come across before. Yeah, we're all marketeers. We all have our own sort of specialist areas, but the primary role of a marketeer is to represent the voice of the customer inside the company. Yeah, the customer needs a seat at the boardroom table, and it's the marketeer's job is to be that voice. If they are not market orientated, they are not ensuring that the customer's needs, wants, desires are at the heart of the decision making inside the company. So market orientation is about a mindset. It's about putting in place a culture that says we're not just going to look out at the marketplace and our competitors and look at these segments and this is how we see the marketplace in front of us. It's about taking that, flipping it 180 degrees and say we need to understand how they see us. And in order to do that, you're going to have two-way dialogue, and social media will be a key part to how you're going to encourage people to give you this positive or negative. You need both. Nobody has the perfect business, the perfect service. There are things that will niggle your customers if you're not asking them what they think and feel about you, or about the category in general. You're missing an opportunity. And social will be one of the platforms that I use for all of my companies. When we're doing some diagnosis and trying to get them market orientated, social will be one of the platforms we will use to ensure we start to get two-way dialogue.
I love this, obviously, as you'd fully expect, Carl. And LinkedIn polls is something that I would throw into the ring straight away on this. Really advantageous. LinkedIn prioritized this type of content at the moment as well, above just normal static feed posts. So using polls, and particularly if you're a managing director, someone within that C-suite, it actually is very much in that bucket of thought leadership content anyway. And if you are even just being seen as to asking questions and doing this market orientation piece is insanely powerful. So using LinkedIn polls is something that I would chuck at you on that one, Carl. And
there's other things on that, Chris, that you could do as well. Like, with the brewery company, with this project, we're going to camera, because they're, it's on a regional basis camera. They've got four areas within the Norfolk region and one in North Suffolk. And we're going to approach them about using their social channels anonymously to invite their members via social to participate in our survey, because we want to get some fresh, come at it completely fresh, rather than knowing who the company is. We want to get other people's views on how do they see the real ale craft beer category and who is top of mind as a brand.
Should you incentivize this, Carl? Because because that's something, that's a sticking point for some of the social campaigns I've been involved in before. And I do also think businesses make the mistake of, if they do something like this, they often say, oh, well, it didn't work, no one bothered to give us any feedback. Well, it's because you made it all about you and not about them. And so using things like discounts, using things like competitions, exclusive things,
100%.
That's good to do, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, definitely. And you don't need to go overboard. I mean, I've been working with a cycling holiday company since January, and needless to say, I took them through this exact process, and they were really reluctant and said, "Oh, yeah, well, we've sort of done things like this before, and we didn't really get a good response." And I said, "Well, let's have a look at what you did before. There was no incentive, and it was all a bit binary, yes, no answers, and it just wasn't it was the right idea, the wrong execution." So we said, look, let's have another go. And we're actually going to put a high value, low cost incentive into the research. And we had, it was just under 100 responses, which for them, they're a small cycling holiday company. They can base decisions. And in fact, one of the key things that came out of that research was that 76% of the people that book a cycling holiday to Mallorca or France will also attend one sportif, a cycling event in the UK each year. So we looked at that and said, okay, this combined with the fact that there was such little recognition for any brand dominating the cycling holiday company world, there's an opportunity here. So this weekend, literally just down the road for me, is TPR Events, and they're running the Tour de Broads event. My client is now sponsoring a local business, and they're sponsoring it for 12 months because we've seen through the research there's an opportunity here that nobody has grabbed. So we're grabbing it.
And this is the exciting thing. Like, I really hope that people have listened and learned from you today, Carl, and they actually don't think this is a fluffy, non-essential, almost boring piece of marketing. Like, I think it's actually so exciting. You can do some incredible things. And Carl, I'm so aware of time. I really want to ask you, please, just to fire at me. I like to end on what are the top mistakes that people are making. And so I'll throw that one at you. When it comes to navigating, let's go back to the start, the brand battlefield.
Yeah.
What are the maybe 1, 2, 3 sort of big mistakes that you can share with us so that other business leaders don't fall into those traps?
Okay, so number one would be not doing it at all. So it's a bit of an obvious one, but I honestly think 7 out of 10 companies that I come across do not do it. So that would be the first one, is just do something. Even if it's just a bit of qual and a little bit of quant, you've got to be miles ahead of most other businesses by doing something. When it comes to actual falling down on deliverables in brand diagnosis, probably one of the biggest ones I see is making decisions on personal assumption and bias. It's so prevalent. I think that's probably going to be number one, where, I know my marketplace. I've been doing this 30 years. I'm really in tune with that. I know what I want. And,
Quick one on this, Carl. Sorry to interrupt you. I had this a couple of days ago, which was, I hate TikTok. I hate it. Now our market won't be there. And I've looked and I've gone, there is hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people talking about what you are offering on this platform. And so, just wanted to validate that.
It's so true. So I think number 2 is probably this obsession with communications. We just need to be getting stuff out there. We need to be doing our social and email, and we need some ads running, and we've got to be doing some pay-per-click. And businesses are obsessed with this short-term window, when it's proven, there is empirical data out there that proves that businesses that approach a proper sequential diagnosis, proper strategy, drives good use of tactics, they will grow faster and be more profitable and have greater customer loyalty than those that just get obsessed with communications. So I think that's probably number 2, would be obsession with communications. A little pet hate of mine, if I'm allowed to share a little pet hate, it's quite a little thing, but it really annoys me.
So it actually is a big thing then. You're lying, Carl. It's actually a big.
But in terms of a deliverable, it's a little thing. And it's the use of customer personas.
Oh, okay.
Now, customer personas, in isolation of having any proper data, insights behind it, are just fictitious, lazy marketing. There, I said it now, haven't I? I can't take it back now. It's true. If you're going to go to the point of creating customer personas, please make sure there's some proper research and insight that goes into the content of the persona. Don't just sit in the office and write 5 different personas based on, you give it a nice sexy name, and this is what I think, this is Mary, the well-educated, and you give it this name, but it's all based on your opinion.
Yes.
I'm all for personas where there is proper insights and data driving them.
And of course, do something with them, because that's the other thing. People do it and they don't even do anything with it anyway. And so, yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. Carl, it's been a blockbuster. It really has. And at some stage, we'll do a round two. Where can people find you, Carl? How can people start to aboard the brand diagnosis train with you? How can they connect?
There's a couple of things that, if there's businesses, watching, I do a free consultation. So if you think you could benefit from having somebody just help you navigate this, the brand battlefield, do a bit of diagnosis, then, on my website and via LinkedIn, you can find me, contact me, and we can do a free consultation. If you're a marketeer, that wants to upskill and be a bit more confident with brand strategy, I do an online masterclass. The next one will probably be starting September, October. I haven't fixed the start date yet. They're small groups, so it might only be 10 or 15 people. It'll be about 6 weeks. We go through very specific modules, one of which is brand diagnosis. It's the longest module that we do. And at the end of that masterclass, you get to sit the world's most advanced brand strategy simulator, which will probably scare the pants off you. But having done the masterclass, you'll be in a good place to do okay in the simulator.
I love that. That sounds intriguing. Carl, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And thank you so much to everyone watching and listening, whether you're watching live or watching or listening back, whichever platform it is. Do feel free to give us feedback. We are at Reeve Social. You can drop us a private message to Chris Reeve on LinkedIn. As always, a huge thank you to Big C, who sponsored this podcast. We are in association with those guys, and also Hill Coaching Company. Really, really massive thanks to them. And last but by no means least, one more plug for Reputation Matters. This event is going to be a belter. You're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be really easy to understand. So if you are a business leader and you just are so fed up of all of these marketing acronyms and you don't understand all of this fluffy nonsense, turn up to Reputation Matters and we will help change that for you. Thank you so much for tuning in once again to A Coffee with Chris, and I'll see you this time next week for another episode.